Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in. I always appreciate it. You guys are the best. I brought my model Will in today, and you might recognize him because he was in one of my previous videos. And I did show you the video and I did do the haircut. The thing about that haircut though is I never really explained it. So in my other video, I talked about descending fade, which means starting at the top and blending down rather than blending up, right? We're blending down. And I did it on a mannequin. When I do it on a mannequin, I a lot of times talk more about technique and less about the actual haircut. So this is going to be more of the haircut, applying it to the head shape, talking about the design, talking about where the weight placement is, talking about where the round of the head is, and all that stuff. So we're going to do it live, and there is no editing on this, so you guys will know exactly how good of a cutter I really am. So the benefits of this, again, we talked about this other video about the technique, but I'll go over it quickly. When I would use this is when I want an elongated graduation. So I want a really smooth graduation is a good time to use it. Sometimes when you move up the head, then you can fade in according to the bumps around the head shape. So what that means is if they have scars or bumps or protruding occipital bones, you're able to see that, so it reveals itself. So that's a good time to use it. I'd use it for really short hair, highly textured hair, bald fades, things like that. Where I wouldn't use it is if the hair is just a little bit longer. Because I'm working top down, I'm working with my shortest fade or my shortest length up here. So what that means is if it's over a 2, then I would probably just move clipper over comb. So that's when I would not use this technique, if that makes sense. Again, I'll use a 1.5, which is, again, this is the longest blade that I use. And anything more than this, I clipper over comb. Anything more than that, I just consider a guard. I do use detachable blades, which I've talked about before as well, but I use detachable blades. And when I use this, it's because this blade is actually sharper. Whereas if I just put a plastic blade over the top of it, it creates a longer, you have less tension. So it tends to not cut as well, not crispy, not clean. And that's why you see people move over it a lot, because it's just not quite as sharp. So I'm going to go from a 1.5 to a 1 to a 0A to a 0. Again, one thing I didn't really talk about, but I want to talk about is design. Now, design to me is the difference between a really good haircut and a good haircut. An exceptional haircut and an okay haircut. Because sometimes you look at it and you just think it's that much better. A lot of times it's where you're placing the weight. So even though in masculine shapes, we tend to make them a little bit more boxy and keep the angles on them, but I still want to be able to follow the round of the head when it comes to my partings. So what that means is the roundest part of the head is right here on most people. Sometimes it's a little bit lower, but generally speaking, the parietal ridge is up here. Now the round of the head goes lower once it jumps down the back. So if I was to create, let's say this is a really horizontal line, usually it's a little bit less aesthetically pleasing if you go too high up. This is because what's happening is you're putting the weight really high, which makes this part look a lot heavier and a lot more weighted. And we want to reduce that and put the weight in where it's a little bit flatter up here. That's what creates a really, I took a couple of pictures, whatever. If you have questions about pictures, I can show you pictures. But how I'm going to avoid that and keep with the round of the head is moving that down like that, if that makes sense. And then coming across like this. I know you guys have asked me to do kind of a partings class, and I would love to do that because I do think they're very imperative and very relevant. One trick that I will tell you off the get-go is hold your finger right here at this so that you're using both so that you feel the hair moving. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is the way that I think about it, and every time I do this, because again, I really believe that life is practice, and I don't just practice or pay attention only when I'm in front of the camera. Every haircut that I do, I try to create the cleanest lines possible. So one way I go about that is I try to do it in 3 sections. I'm not always successful in it, but I always try to do it in 3 sections where I'm going 1, where I go straight back there, I come around 2, or I'm coming around, and then I do 3 on that left side. And I try to get it as even as possible. My old boss used to say, "Oh, you wanted it even? Even's extra." Now, let's say I wanted to create a little bit better U shape in the back here. Do you see this okay?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Let's say I want to create a little bit more shape. A lot of times, what I'll see people do is kind of pick and try and get it like hair by hair, and then this falls, and then this falls, and they're always trying to. So, a better way to do it is just start more in the beginning and kind of create one fluid line like this, if that makes sense. One fluid line. And then one fluid line, rather than just kind of trying to pick up hair by hair. All right, so this is satisfactory. If you tend to have if you have a tendency to take this too high, you can always drop those partings lower. The partings are for you, and a lot of times I'll have people say, "Oh, I don't part my hair there." It's like the partings are for me, not for them. But the difference is that I'm just separating the top from the bottom. So as long as I have clean lines up here and it's even, I have a stronger possibility of cutting an even haircut overall. All right, so I'm going to clip this up for, cleanliness sake, I guess. Sure, not for cute sake. And then everybody says, "Oh, you should leave my hair like this." And then I have to awkwardly smile as if it was funny. I'm like, every time, "You should leave my hair like this." "Oh, that's a good look." And then I'm like, yeah, moving on. All right. So again, normally I blow dry this hair. I don't want to. It's kind of loud, so I don't want to. I can't even see if this is even. Is this even? Not terribly. I'm just gonna kind of straighten up this one side a little bit. It's always harder working in a mirror. It's funny because when somebody starts out in hair, they don't use the mirror enough, and when someone's really advanced in hair, they use the mirror too much because they don't even know how to talk to them directly anymore. They always talk to them through the mirror, and but then people fresh out of school, they're so scared of the mirror. They hate looking in it and using it as a tool. But the mirror is a tool. I can tell you right now because I'm feeling really uncomfortable not knowing if that's even. But all right, so one thing that I also want to talk about is as I move through the head here, I am going to create my fade and follow my lines. So the way that I have it parting is the way that I'm going to cut it, and I want to follow that purposefully. If you wanted to create a higher fade, generally speaking, you could make your partings a little higher. If you wanted to make it a little lower, let's say they have kind of a really narrow shape in through this, and you wanted to create a lower fade, drop your partings. The partings are just for you to give it a visualization of where you're going. You're starting with the end in mind. So this is almost like your roadmap. It's like, if you're going out to sea and you're planning your way, you're planning it before you jump on the boat going, "Hey, where are we going?" Same idea. So I'm just going to kind of get to cutting and wish me luck. Let me know if you have any questions. 1.5. I'm gonna clip this hair up because I don't want it to fall. Kind of a lot of hair. Okay. Good. So now I'm going to use my number one blade. I'm going to do two things with it. I'm going to do two things with it. I'm going to create an elongated fade. Remember, it's going to be kind of a visual blend kind of from the bottom up. And then I'm also going to do clipper over comb to blend this area in. I could have gone a little like with a 1.5 to the top, but I think just a nice clipper over comb blend will be good. One. Okay, so that's my kind of blend through the bottom, and then I'm going to go back through on the top with my clipper over comb. One thing I'll talk about kind of blending this down, one thing you can do is pull that comb out to the left. So what that does is by pulling this out to the left, it over-directs this hair back, which allows you to create a better blend fluidly down without having to go up too high. What I find is, especially when people are starting out, is that they remove too much weight and they don't know how to kind of go down. How you go down is literally by kick this left side out. And again, I'm right-handed. If you're left-handed, always start on the other side. So same idea on the opposite side. I'm pulling that out to blend that. Alrighty, so that's just pretty much a 1.5 kind of idea. And then I'm going to go down to a 0A. I find this is just kind of the easier way to do it. I mean, again, the other way to do it is I start down here and then fade up. And you can do that way too. Is there a way? Let me know what way you guys prefer doing. And then I'm going to go down to my 0-aught. Again, I always think it looks pretty good at a 0A, and the 0-aught just kind of gives it that extra little edge, maybe that extra couple days of growth. And I will kind of teach you how I blend these two in a minute. He doesn't really have a lot of darkness. Sometimes these bones right here get a little tricky. If this 0A, excuse me, the 0-aught is anywhere there's a dark shadow, you want to kind of fade and take those out. Again, he doesn't really have any, so makes me look good. But let's say he's got something right here. I would only want to shadow right under where that darkness is. If you go up on top of that bone, you're going to end up with another shadow here, if that makes sense. So that's a nice benefit of doing a descending fade, is because when you do that, it reveals itself. It shows you what you're working with, and you just fade out those dark spots. So it's a little more on tuition. The technique part comes into where you put that weight placement, where you put the design, and then also the efficiency of it, that you're moving from right to left, and that you're able to do it kind of in one fell swoop, and you're able to fade and take away those shadows as you move throughout the head, rather than going, oh, here's one, here's one, here's one, and then you end up all over the place. And then what happens is, if you go on top of a bone, now you're going back and forth, trying to adjust that shadow now. So just try to create a level of efficiency. Now, this is in my mind, and I would say 80% of the time I get to this point and I'm like, okay, it's complete, it's good. Sometimes I do have to go back, adjust something, kind of do it according to whatever the haircut is telling me to do. In this scenario, again, I'm kind of like working off the side with no mirror. Probably my cleanest, best work. But the idea is that, let's say that there's a little shadow, there's a little something. I do want to go back and kind of address that. This is my 1.5 again. So, but overall, and then I would edge this out. Now, to address the sideburn area, what I do is I take it horizontally from the sideburn to the top and go up. Then what I do is I take my next level down. So if I do a 0-aught right here, I'll do a 0A right below it, but only on about 1/4 inch. And that's just to blend it. So I'll take the 0A, which is one level higher. If I only went to a 0A, then it would go up to a 1. So go up a level and blend just about 1/4 inch in. Something like that. And then I go up one more level and do the next one. And sometimes I'll go down with it just to make sure that it's all blended. And then I'll take my edger, which I have to switch. Ooh, 20 minutes. You guys still with me? Okay, so on this area, then I'll make sure that any extra hairs that will help the whole blend in general too. So and sometimes you can go in at a little angle and kind of fade that out. If the beard is a lot longer, what I would do is I would take the beard out this way, clean up that edge, take that out that way, clean up that edge. And what it does is it creates a natural taper. So if you over direct it out, create a clean line, then as it moves inward, it will go from short to long, which creates a natural over direction, which is a really good trick for anywhere on the head. We've been doing a lot of it up here where you create longer here. In theory, short hair pushes long, so we're trying to get hair to go against itself. But in the beard, it's on a much smaller scale. Sometimes on longer hair, I'll do the same thing where I'll pull the hair forward, I'll cut it right here. And then what it does is it naturally pushes it back because you're going from short to long. Short hair always pushes long hair. So um, that's pretty much the fade on the bottom part. On the top part, again, you know, this is a very much of like a highly disconnected haircut. I don't know. I've gotten so much crap for cutting that one guy's hair off. I'm afraid to cut it off. Will gave me full permission to do whatever I want. And I could leave this. He's a bartender, and he is, you know, he can wear and rock a funkier, sportier look. I mean, their career has some relevancy because, you know, if he was maybe a banker, I probably wouldn't do this look on him. But just for time's sake, I want to keep this a little bit longer. Now, there's a heavy, heavy disconnection through the back, which is fine. But the reality is most of the people want their length up here. If I blend this back, it actually doesn't disrupt any of this length. So I'm still able to keep that hair really long up here and still take some of this in the back. I do want to continue with kind of this V shape as I move through the back. So I'm just going to kind of keep it at an angle. Because I'm going a little bit longer, I'm able to create because I'm going a little bit longer, I want to create kind of a little bit of a V shape back here, if that makes sense. So when I pull this down, I'm going to cut it kind of into an angle. And most of my length is going to come from the back area. Now, if I was prepared, I would have brought my razor, but you know. So basically, I'm just going to kind of work my way back. The reason I'm working into a V is because I want the shape to work into a V. So I'm going to go from a little bit longer into this V length. I'm using a point cutting. Could I use straight lines? Sure. I find that it's really hard to get this really very disconnected look back to sit back well with long, with really straight lines, excuse me. Okay. Now I'm going to move into this other side. This other side is shorter. I did kind of notice that. This is my longest length now, so I'm going to move in more to a V again. By pulling this hair down, I'm creating the maximum amount of weight and the maximum amount of length. If I wanted to take just weight off, I would elevate up. I would work up in here. That would remove weight. But I want to keep the length and the weight more or less. Does that make sense? Just going to get that little tail off. I'm not going to address this too heavily. I do want to kind of move into a video that addresses just transitions. I do think it's a very overlooked area in hair cutting in general, especially men's hair cutting. But this is just kind of an overview just to have somewhat of a completed look. So I know I do want to move that hair back, but doesn't that look a little bit better? I could still go with it. I could go a little bit shorter, but don't want to be braided for taking too much length off. As far as the front goes, I mean, I could create one cohesive line, taking that back. But in theory, this should be longer in the front and then moving back into shorter. That's going to be kind of the easiest because, again, most of these guys coming in showing you this kind of longer hair up front, this is where they want the length. And in fact, this triangle is pretty much where the majority of all your length is going to come from. Once it sits in the back, the longer this gets, the more disconnected it gets, the harder it is for anybody to wear their hair. I wore my hair like this for a little bit, and it was really hard because I had the bottom shaved and then the top was a lot longer, but it splits on you. It doesn't, because the head is round and you're, again, going against its natural direction because it wants to push forward. It's kind of like trying to get a mullet to move forward, right? Like it's cut to move back. And if you try to do anything else, you're working against the hair. which is fine. I mean, it's a good look. It's just not, it doesn't just fall into place. You don't wake up in the morning, it's like, bam, there's my great look. So you have to kind of work to get it there. So we'll kind of leave it at this because I don't want to go too far into it. And we got a little bit of a late start. So, so we're moving on. All right, so how I would do this is I would blow dry this. One thing that you can teach your clients is you can put a gel in or something in there in the very beginning. Of course, I don't have that, but I want to just show you how I teach my clients. Can you hold this well? Danke. And I say teach my clients because I think it's really an important part of our job to be able to teach our clients. Because let's say you do a perfect haircut on him and then he leaves and he doesn't know how to do his hair. Now all of a sudden your hair is walking around town a mess for an entire month before you see them again because you didn't teach them how to do their hair. So how they do their hair is very reflective of your work when you're not doing it for them in that month in between. So what I teach them is that I want to create movement. I want the hair to go back. I want it to go back into the center. So I want the root direction to go back. It's more important because a lot of times you just see people blow drying like this, but that doesn't really help. That just kind of creates a poof ball. What I want to do is I want to create the sides to go back. So I teach them to hold and pull their hair at the root like this. So I pull up. So it's less relevant what the ends are doing. I mean, if the hair's curly, I mean, if you have like Justin Timberlake, he's probably going to have to blow dry it the entire way through. But it's less relevant what the ends are doing, and it's more relevant what the roots are doing. So these roots are what I want back. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little hairspray in it, and then I'm going to re-blow dry it and really get that product into the hair. A lot of times what happens is we just use a really, really, really heavy product, and then want that to be our prep product, our finished product, and get the hair to stay. The problem with a really heavy product is once it goes away, the hair doesn't have any memory to it. By blow drying the hair and blow drying the products into the hair, it gives the hair a lot more memory. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a hairspray. I'm going to spray it right into the root where I want it. This is how I did my own hair this morning, actually. Now you know. And then I'm going to blow dry it out into the hair. Sorry, too much. And then when you blow dry product into the hair, what is really nice about it is when he wakes up the next morning, he can maybe run a little water through it, put a little more product, layer it, and blow dry it into the hair more. And so what it does is it just keeps getting better and better rather than worse and worse as the product breaks down. Now I'm going to use a finishing product, but it's going to be more effective because I already did the work in the prep. So now I need less product. And then even if that product wears away, it's still going to have a memory. So that's why it's important to really get in the hair. I'm going to use a matte product. He's got really thick blonde hair with a few highlights. Did not do that. I did not do that. Did not do the highlights. I always teach my clients to put the product directly into their hands, emulsify it into their hands, and then get it into the hair. What I see a lot of is I go like this and then like this. And then what happens is it gets really clumped up in the front and nothing else is addressed. So I'm going to move the product right in through there. Have this hair go back. There's a little more cohesiveness back here. I mean, it kind of comes to a point, but again, this is part of the design of wherever that point comes to. Sometimes I see it really, really long. Sometimes I see it kind of just a mess, but I want it to be a little bit part of the design where it's kind of moving into that point. So, it's really hard not to make fun of these highlights. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh, you did it yourself? Nice. I'm impressed. It's kind of like I'm starting to see these girls wanting perms again. I'm like, clearly they did not live through the 80s. Okay. All right. So this is Will. It is a good overview. Thank you, Will. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure. All right. So last time on the last video, I'm gonna move this up a little bit. On the last video, I talked to you a little bit about how you should be delegating your time. Is this height okay? I should be higher? Yeah. So this is, just kidding. Okay, so I'll talk like this. So last time I was talking about relationships and how you should delegate your time. And when you're running a business, 75% of it should be relationships, 15% of it should be branding, and 10% should be numbers. Now, 75% was the relationships. That's what I talked about in another video. This one, I want to talk to the branding. Branding is your message. It is what you put out into the world. Everybody has a brand. You have a brand. I have a brand. Companies have a brand. Now, if you take me, for example, I have an actual company and then I have myself. They're two different brands, but at the end of the day, they're both a brand, including myself. I am a brand. Amanda Olusanya is a brand. And what I put the message out into the world is what I get back. So if you put a very victim message out into the world, you get a victim message back. You find victim people. You find your like kind. When you build a stronger brand that is positive or giving or all of these things, what happens is you find the people around you that allows you to grow yourself. So the more positive you put out there, the more positive people find you. And then all of a sudden you're just surrounded by positivity. What you put out into the world is what you give back. And even if you haven't deliberately been giving a message, you have been giving a message. Now, the difference is whether you want to control that message or whether the message controls you, right? So the way that I think about a brand, so I have a company. So my company brand is we want to cut sophisticated men's hair in an urban market for business professionals who believe in giving back. That is my company message, right? A lot of companies craft their message very carefully because, again, what you put out is what you get back. Now, my personal message and my personal brand is something closer to I want to surround myself around people and give passion so that they dream bigger and create more opportunity from themselves by making more money. I want people that want to dream big, and I want people that want to push themselves so that they can create more opportunity for themselves. That's more my personal brand. Now, do the two blend? Absolutely. My personal brand has to move into my company brand, and my company brand has to match my personal brand. If my brand is to give back and then I'm, off taking or off doing this, it's not going to work. It's not going to be authentic, and it's not going to be genuine. And I talked last time that you have to be genuine in whatever message that you put out into the world. You have to be genuine because people see through it, especially in today's world. I mean, I think more than ever, our voting power is strong because we are now voting with our money and finding companies who are more authentic. And there's more data and more research out there. And eventually, if you're not authentic to your brand, it will catch up to you. So just make sure you're authentic. Now, I have to admit that branding of these three topics is probably my least favorite. And my least favorite because I'm the worst at it. I've never been good at branding myself. I always thought if I became the best hairstylist in the world, or if I became so masterful at my craft, the world would somehow know it. And I was very dead wrong. And it wasn't until, I started putting these videos out about 8 years ago, but I didn't really have any thought or idea behind this. I just kind of put out what it was into the world. And it wasn't until I spoke to the world that the world spoke back to me, right? So you've got to put yourself out there on some level. And that was really hard for me in the beginning. And I think because it was such a weakness of mine, it became a strength. But because I studied it and really tried to understand something that I wasn't naturally good at. So sometimes, your weaknesses can become your strength because you want to learn it, you want to understand it, right? So you go to the depths of trying to get it. Now, this is what I would suggest for you and your personal brand moving forward. I would pick 2 platforms. So don't, we're berated right now by Instagram and Snapchat and Pinterest and Google and all these things that we have to do to get our message out there. But I would just kind of tone it down, pick 1 or 2 that have spoken well to you, that you really like, and that is giving back to you as well. I remember I started like trying to really push my Instagram, but then I realized the world wasn't really responding well, but then the world was responding to my YouTube. So I was like, oh, like go with YouTube if that's what people are wanting. But with that said, the way that you want to think about it is a couple keynotes. One, Google and YouTube are owned by each other. Facebook and Instagram are owned by each other. So if you want to drive your Instagram traffic, be very heavy on Facebook. If you want to drive your Google traffic, be heavy on YouTube. But one difference that I found was that Instagram is very two-dimensional and it's very static work. What that means is like right now you're looking at me in a 3 dimension. In Instagram, it flattens the image, right? It completely flattens it into a two-dimensional world. And so I find that Instagram shows off the end product better and YouTube shows off the process better. And for me, I've been really big into the process and I've been tried to be very masterful in my craft. And I feel like it shows up better for me on YouTube. But some people kill Instagram. They do really, really well with it. But just remember, it's one end image, right? So if you have the time to do it and you have the time to style someone and you have the time to do it, Instagram is a great platform as well. But remember, it's owned by Facebook. So Facebook is willing to get you off of there. I don't want to get too deep into it, but the point is if you're heavy on Facebook, Facebook will support you on Instagram. If you're heavy on YouTube, Google will support you because they're semi-owned. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself. But the idea too is that you just want to focus. You want to focus on one brand. I know focus is not my strong point either, but you want to focus on one brand. You want to focus on one platform. I mean, maybe 2, but don't get so heavy trying to do every single thing on every single platform. You're just going to weigh yourself down, and you're actually not going to get busier. So just remember that sometimes the busiest people or the least busy people have the most amount of time and can perfect those haircuts. And sometimes they set up an entire day just to do that stuff. So just make sure that if you're going to put yourself on that platform that you have time to put in towards it. Yeah, blah. All right. So that's kind of all I have for you today. I just want you to kind of keep thinking about everything that you're doing, working on your partings as you move through the haircut. Think about why you're doing what you're doing. So there's no right or wrong in hair, but think about why you're doing what you're doing. So if you're doing a descending fade and you're starting from the top to bottom, why are you doing that? Or if you're moving up the head, why are you doing that? Right? So just make sure that you're able to answer why. Again, a lot of times we're so intuitive and we just kind of, well, it's the way I've done it, or it feels right, or I know it's going to look good. Those are all very intuitive answers. But dive down deeper and kind of get into that technical answer too. Why am I doing this? And starting with the end in mind. So, all right. I love you guys all. One other thing, I have this new project that I want to do. And what it is it's this map of around the world, and Brazil, you guys have shown me love from the beginning. So I have you marked, but if you're ever on my live stream or even in my comments, type in where you're from, even the city and the country, and I'll put a pin on here. I want to see where people are from around the world. I think this is so cool that technology has connected us more than ever, and I want to see it on a piece of paper of what it really looks like and how much impact we all have together. So write in your city, write in your country. Let me know where your love is coming from, and I'll give it right back to you. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you soon.